Welcome Amy Love to the stage. Amy is our first storyteller. She is the legislative liaison with the Arizona Supreme Court, and she's going to talk a little bit about her unlikely path to politics. She started while working at a Tempe tattoo shop. How's that?
Thank you, Yvonne. So, I accidentally dropped out of college in the summer of my 21st year. I've been taking general education courses at Scottsdale Community College, go Artichokes, and working in a pet shop to subsidize my ever-increasing saltwater aquarium habits. When suddenly I found myself with an associate's degree and no idea what I wanted to do with my life. So I just didn't enroll in the fall semester. Right around the same time, the owner of the pet shop had decided that his business would be far more lucrative if he ordered puppies from a puppy mill. When he gathered us around and informed us that the first shipment would be arriving in 2 weeks, I quickly informed him that their first day would be my last. So there I was, a soon-to-be unemployed college dropout. You can imagine how thrilled my parents must have been at this thought. You see, my mother has a degree in English, and she spent our time in Texas doing some writing for a state representative from Dallas. My father is a lawyer, and we've had an attorney in every generation of our family for as far back as anybody can remember. When they divorced, she remarried to an electrical engineer. So my higher education was always just kind of assumed. Nevertheless, I didn't want to waste my time or their money pursuing a degree if my heart wasn't really in it. All I really knew was that I wanted to help people. I just didn't know what that would look like. So the day the puppies arrived, I said hello to each and every one of them, and goodbye to all of my friends, then made plans to go to lunch the following day with Elizabeth from the reptile department. As we headed north on Mill Avenue towards Gordon Biersch, I asked if she would mind stopping in to Living Canvas Tattoos so I could schedule a touch-up for the piece my sister and I got on her 18th birthday. She was happy to oblige, and as we opened the door to the studio in June of 2000, we were hit in the face with that customary blast of air conditioning that is Arizona summers are known for, but it came coupled with the calm yet sterile odor that is undeniably a tattoo parlor. The mix of A&D ointment, pine sol, and green soap contrasted starkly with the loud buzzing sound coming from the back room. "I'll be with you in a moment. I'm all by myself today," came a male voice. So we grabbed a few magazines and a few books of flash and sat down to wait. A few moments later, a fully sleeved man came around the corner, peeling off a pair of latex gloves and looking extremely stressed out. It was that moment I decided that instead of a touch-up, I would ask for a job. His face lit up. "Great, can you start right now?" I laughed and said no, but I can come back tomorrow. He said, "Fabulous, we open at 10, and with that, he turned on his heels and went back to his client. As we walked out the door, I called over my shoulder, "See you in the morning. By the way, my name is Amy." After several years of working for Mark Walters, I began receiving phone calls from angry parents demanding to know why we had tattooed and pierced their minor children. Given we had a sign that prohibited minors from entering the shop, we were thoroughly confused. Come to find out, another studio had opened north of us on Mill, but they didn't have a listing in the yellow pages, hence the angry calls to our shop. They also didn't have a use permit or any business or tax licenses as are required to operate in this state. One angry parent finally called the mayor's office, and a letter was sent to the shop owner, who quickly filed all of the requisite paperwork. We found out that the first of several hearings would be held in just a few short weeks by the city council to discuss this pending application. For the first time in forever, all of the local shop owners from Club Tattoo, Urban Art, Clan Tattoo, and Living Canvas got together to discuss what they were going to do to preserve their industry's reputation from these so-called scratchers. As we gathered at Club, one of the owners revealed that he had looked into hiring a lobbyist to go speak to the city council. But even with our combined resources, this was not financially feasible. So I helpfully pointed out that I had taken Public Speaking 101 at Scottsdale Community College, and had even received an A. So I was voluntold by my boss that I would be the spokesperson for Living Canvas. I immediately nerded out. I got online and researched statutes from other states, because again, there were none here. I looked up OSHA and industry standards with respect to sterilization and clean rooms, and I pored over Mark's files from when he himself had fought the city and neighborhood activists back in 1993 who were determined to keep those people out of their neighborhood. When the evening, actually, I even sketched out all my notes on index cards like they taught me in class, and poor Ed the piercer had to sit outside the shop and time me in between his camel lights and belly button piercings. So the night of the first hearing came, and we gathered at that weird upside-down pyramid building in downtown Tempe. I'm pretty sure it was the first time any of those people had been in a business suit in like 10 years. And I stood up to go first, kind of like tonight. And I was pretty nervous, kind of like tonight. But I stood up there and spoke my truth, which was that it wasn't fair that we had all followed the rules to a T. These people had broken every single one of them, and they sought to get a fair pass. If that were to be the case, what's the point of having rules in the first place? After the first hearing, I was actually interviewed by the Arizona Republic. And by the second hearing, the city council chambers were considerably more full. By the third and final hearing, it was practically standing room only. As we waited with bated breath to hear the council members' votes come back, a cheer erupted from our group when they denied the use permit and the mayor ordered them to close their doors immediately. It was my first political victory, and I loved every minute of it. It began to dawn on me that there might be more to life than photocopying IDs and making stencils of tribal armbands, so I decided to look into going back to school. I met with an advisor from ASU and told her that this course I'd taken at SCC called Intro to the Study of Language had been my favorite. She suggested speech pathology as a possible major. Given I suffered a severe lisp until third grade, I wasn't entirely sure that I wanted to go down that path, considering how much I personally hated my own speech therapist. But she suggested I take a few classes without actually enrolling into college to see if it was the right path for me. After a semester of phonetics and a course called the Brain, Memory, and Language, I was hooked. The next semester, I enrolled in a full course load, and after 3 years, I was back on track. As I entered my final year at ASU, I received an invitation for the legislative internship program at our state capitol. As I read over the description, it reminded me greatly of all the work I'd done several years prior, researching for the city council hearings. So naturally, I called my mom to get her thoughts. She reminded me that she was the one who brought me into this world, and she would take me right back out of it if I didn't apply. So I assured her that I intended to apply for every single internship available, with the exception of the Supreme Court, because I just purchased my first home and I didn't want to move to Washington, D.C. I heard a tiny gasp across the phone line, and she asked out loud, "Oh my God, how have I failed you?" She suggested that I brush up on my civics should I get the honor of an interview, so I quickly dusted off my copy of America the Book by Jon Stewart and set to writing my personal statement. When the morning of my interview arrived, I was a hot mess. Literally, I was wearing this awful suit that my mother had made me buy at Macy's, and I'll never forget standing in the dressing room arguing with her because she said, "You need to wear a skirt and black opaque hose to cover up that mess you drew all over the top of your feet." I suggested a pantsuit would accomplish the same goal, but she assured me, "Amy, this is Arizona. It's a conservative state, and women will be expected to wear a skirt." I replied that it's 2005 and they make pantsuits. They even sell them here. Her response was that people also sell heroin and we wouldn't be purchasing either of them. So as I entered the conference room and faced a 15-member panel for my first interview, I immediately jumped on my mental hamster wheel and began running to nowhere. When the first question came, I was surprised that it had nothing to do with my greatest strengths or weaknesses, or whether or not I had even participated in any campaigns. Instead, the entire panel wanted to know, who handles tattoo pain better, men or women? Women, obviously. We have to give birth. We have a higher threshold for pain, was my immediate response, and then I turned red. But the whole room laughed, and I relaxed, and the interview went smoothly after that. A few weeks later, I received a call from a man who identified himself as the Director of Government Affairs for the Arizona Supreme Court. To this day, I wonder if Jerry Landau could hear me jumping up and down on my sofa as I happily accepted his internship. The internship would last for 18 weeks from January until May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. And I had to postpone graduation by a semester in order to accept it. My final semester came and I was doing clinical observations, but instead of going back to the tattoo shop, Jerry had worked with our HR department to ensure that I was able to work part-time and keep my insurance benefits. With graduation quickly coming around the corner, I met with him for coffee and over a bagel cried to him that I wasn't sure this was the path that I was supposed to take to help people. A whole semester of traumatic brain injuries, strokes, and car accident victims had taken its toll on me, and I would go home every day crying. I wasn't sure I could do this for another semester, let alone the next 30 years of my life. And that was when Jerry informed me that he had talked to HR and that if I didn't want to leave, he didn't want me to go, and that my position as legislative analyst could become permanent. So once again, I happily accepted his offer, and I stayed in that role for about 4 years, until once again I had to go in his office and cry. Only this time, it was to tell him that I had accepted a position as the legislative liaison for the Arizona Corporation Commission. It was one of the worst breakups of my life, but fortunately it was short-lived, because 15 months later, the election of 2010 brought with it the sea of change that often accompanies politics and elections in this state. And once again, I got a call from Jerry offering me a position that I couldn't refuse. So for the last 5.5 years, I've been serving as the legislative liaison for the Arizona Supreme Court. Last fall, my CFO called me and told me my #1 priority this session would be to secure approximately $2.5 million in new funding for probation. This was something that hadn't occurred in over a decade. Of course, I called my mom, and I shared with her how daunted I was by this task. And she reminded me that the state representative that she'd worked for in Texas had gone on to become the president and CEO of their Association of Business, which is their version of our Chamber of Commerce. I Googled his name, and sure enough, Bill Hammond came up. And so I placed a call, but immediately got his out of office. I left him a voicemail, and when less than an hour later, a 214 area code number showed up on my phone, I immediately recognized the voice from my childhood. "I take it you're not 10 years old anymore," he said. "No, it's been about 25 years, and I've been at the Supreme Court for the last 10. And I understand that Texas led the reforms when it came to criminal justice in my home state, and I was wondering if you could tell me what role your organization had in that." He was happy to oblige, and he gave me all of the talking points I would need to go back to our legislature. So needless to say, earlier this year, Governor Ducey signed a budget that includes $2.5 million for probation. With that money, we will hire approximately 16 officers, and those 16 officers will go on to supervise 1,040 people in our community, ensuring that they will keep their jobs, pay taxes, and pay child support. I am forever grateful to my mom and to Jerry for pushing me in the direction of a career that finally ensured that I was able to help so many people. And last Friday, before I left the office for the weekend, Jerry stopped by my office one last time to tell me that he'd again been negotiating with HR. And as of today, I am the Deputy Director of Government Affairs for the Arizona Supreme Court. So to celebrate, I think I'm going to get a tattoo.